the afternoon, but it's going to stay grey and overcast. Some brightness coming through in the far south and southeast, whilst it's a sunnier day for North Wales, Northern England and Scotland and Northern Ireland. We'll see further blustery showers coming through. Some strengthening of the winds in the far north and northwest and some heavier rain pushing through on Wednesday evening in the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere, a lot of cloud remains, and that cloud again lowering to cover hills, some misty coasts as well, and some patchy light rain and drizzle at times. But a mild night to come once again in the south, whilst it's a bit colder further north. Thursday then looks largely dry, but not entirely sunny. There will be a lot of cloud cover, particularly across southern and central parts of the UK. Perhaps some dense fog to start off things in the south. But it does brighten up in the south whilst this cloud drifts north. And then Friday it turns more unsettled generally in the north of the UK. And on Saturday, Sunday, things look a lot drier.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
I'm Simon Evans, and in just a moment it'll be time for Headliners, the show where we look at what's in tomorrow's papers. But first, the latest news.
Good evening. Your latest GB News headlines this hour. The European Union could impose sanctions on Belarus after thousands of migrants attempted to cross the border into Poland. NATO has called the migrant surge unacceptable and say they're ready to step in if necessary. Russia, meanwhile, has urged responsible behaviour from both sides. The Polish President, Andrzej Duda, has accused the Belarusian government of aggressive attacks on the Polish border.
The assessment of the situation is clear. The Belarusian regime is attacking the Polish border, the EU, in an unparalleled manner. We have a makeshift migrant camp on the Belarusian side of the border. There are around 1,000 people, mostly young men. It's clear these are aggressive actions that we must repel.
It's going to be compulsory for NHS England frontline staff to be fully vaccinated against COVID by April next year. Around 100,000 NHS workers haven't even had their first dose yet. And the Health Secretary says they must, unless they can prove they're medically exempt.
We must avoid preventable harm and protect patients in the NHS, protect colleagues in the NHS, and, of course, protect the NHS itself.
Meanwhile, care home workers in England have already been told they'll have to have both jabs by this Thursday. Simon Wallace is the clinical lead at St Cecilia's care home in Scarborough. He told GB News that staff have a duty of care to protect their patients, but he acknowledged the care homes can't afford to lose any more staff.
There's a massive void of people already for working within the care sector, and this is only going to make it worse. But then I also feel that the people that we look after need to be protected.
Yorkshire County Cricket Club's first team coach Andrew Gale has been suspended for a historic tweet. It comes after Yorkshire came under scrutiny for their handling of the Azim Rafiq allegations of institutional racism. The government said it's going to step in if cricket leaders fail to carry out a full investigation. And lastly, SpaceX's Dragon capsule has safely splashed down off the Gulf of Mexico. It was the third crew launched into orbit under NASA's partnership with SpaceX. That's the rocket company formed in 2002 by the entrepreneur Elon Musk. The crew spent a total of 199 days at the International Space Station. You're right up to date. Now back to headliners.
Good evening and welcome to Headliners, the show that looks at tomorrow's news today. Here are tomorrow's front pages. The Daily Mail has the £530 million buyout of the insurance company LV by the US firm Bain Capital, and an exposé with further details about MP Geoffrey Cox's second job. The Independent go with COP26's warning about there being a mountain to climb for real progress on the climate. Also, Marcus Rashford getting a gong from Prince William, and it rather looks as if he's mocking his hairline, poor chap. The Metro also have Marcus Rashford receiving his honour, and also Jeff Cox working remotely from the Caribbean. The Guardian have global heating on track to top 2.4 degrees centigrade despite COP26 pledges, and fathers intervening on the thermostat, and questions over Ian Duncan Smith's second job and the situation in Belarus. The Financial Times are going with the migrant crisis in Belarus, and Facebook whistleblower presses UK and EU for stricter online harm curbs. There's a long train of journalese for you. The Telegraph lead with Education Secretary Nadim Zahawi saying that Oxford University owes an explanation to Jewish students for accepting donations from the Mosley Family Trust. The Mirror has compulsory jabs for NHS staff who will face the sack if they don't have both jabs by April of next year. And in The Sun, we have Katie Price admitting she could have killed someone in a drink-driving incident in which her car was tipped on its side. The Daily Star has the hypocrisy of the Green Party moron who has been taking a private jet to COP26 while lecturing everyone else about their carbon footprint. Oh, and sharks in the River Thames and Ant and Dec in Puma terror. That's why I stick with Adidas. This evening, my comedian guests are Tamandra Harkness, more of a lapsed comedian really, and Josh Howie, who is a self-confessed lapsed parent. You can't be both, to be fair, in this game. Welcome to the show, lady and gentlemen. How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Excellent. Right, well, let's start with the Daily Mail this evening. We have two stories, as I mentioned, on their front page. The main one, which seems to carry the bulk of their page, is to do with this insurance crisis, in which there are concerns that a quite ancient and well-established British insurer, which is currently a mutual, could be bought out by an aggressive and hostile American consortium. And Michael Heseltine has been tossing his lion's mane in anger about this and expressing a good deal of vexation in the House of Lords. But we would like to look at a little more detail at Sir Geoffrey Cox, who is exposed as having lived it up somewhat in the last few months, certainly since Easter, roughly speaking, of this year, when new measures were brought in which enabled politicians, MPs, to avoid having to come into the House of Commons and so on in order to vote and to hear debates. They thought it would be better for the COVID crisis and the lockdown if they were allowed to work from home. And so instead, they arranged for them to be able to nominate a proxy who would vote for them and so on, and ideally work in the box room with a well-arranged bookshelf behind them that wouldn't expose too many of their hard right leanings. Instead, Geoffrey Cox wished himself off to the Caribbean, where he's been working as a lawyer for roughly £1,000 an hour for a firm that has... where have we got it? They've been paying him to perform a number of functions in the British Virgin Islands. Cox in Virgin Islands. I mean, that's a scandal in itself, obviously. But he's spent an astonishing 680 hours toiling away for this firm, Withers they're called, raking in some £637,000 in the process, and has contributed not at all to any debates in the meantime in the House of Commons. His glorious, mellifluous baritone, which so swayed so many hearts and minds over the Brexit debate, has not been heard. Who knows what possible measures have been lost as a result. Amanda, what do you make of it? Not strictly illegal, we should say, but...
when people talk about politicians having second jobs, working 36 hours a week as a lawyer in a Caribbean island is kind of pushing it.
It's not what you call a second job.
Yeah, that's his first job. The second job is the MP.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit more of a main job, and not strictly working from home either. I mean, another thing possibly of where he's following the letter of the rules, but not the spirit. Although he has been caught out in the past, hasn't it? Because it did note that in 2016. He was found to have committed a serious breach of rules by neglecting to declare more than £400,000 of outside earnings.
Neglecting.
We all lose a receipt sometimes, but how much do you have to earn that £400,000 slips your mind?
Slips your mind. That's quite impressive.
What
his
did he
homes,
get?
according to the Daily Mail, he has a large rambling home in his constituency. That's an important part. If you're a senior Tory, you have a rambling home in the constituency and a £1.5 million apartment next to the Thames.
Well, who doesn't?
He's got it all kitted out. But then also the third place in... What do you think, Josh?
It's ridiculous. That is a proper job like that. He has spent all that time over there. And the other thing is he's been working against the UK government's interests.
Right.
Like, supposedly there was lots of sort of untoward stuff going on with money in the islands, and they were out there to sort of cut down on it, the UK government.
And he went about a tax dodge.
Yeah, basically. He was out there sort of defending
the right
people.
To tax dodge.
Yeah, and so
against more transparency. Yeah, it's like you say, maybe not illegal, but doesn't look good, does it? Doesn't look good.
Because there's been a lot of anger. I know a few people who work in the restaurant trade, which in itself sounds like something bordering onto a confession. But I just happen to know a few people who have struggled to keep staff. They're struggling to find waiters at the moment because a lot of people are under furlough.
Caribbean. They're all going to the Caribbean. They're all defending people in the Caribbean.
£1,000 an hour.
They're all serving cocktails to Geoffrey Cox on his yacht or
but what
something.
they've done, they were offered furlough, perfectly legal, and so of course a lot of them were migrants, and so they would just go home back to where they came from, where their furlough goes a lot further, you know.
Well, yeah, that's what furlough is. You stay home. Yeah. So if you've got a home in a cheaper country, why wouldn't you go there? Or alternatively in the British Virgin Islands.
He's a very good example, is he, Frank?
He's not.
We feel rather disgusted with this. I think there's another Tory MP.
Yeah, Ian Duncan Smith. This is in The Guardian on the front page. So he gets paid £25,000 a year by a company that makes hand sanitizers, and he's also in charge of the task force that has now said that particular type of hand sanitizer is actually really good. And he also owns shares in the company, and surprise, surprise, everything seems to be doing really well for that company. And but I'm just sort of sad. £25,000. It's not a lot. It's not a lot of money. And I don't have, but I'm sure we could get together £25,000 and get ourselves a Tory MP.
I feel like the headline for this should be Cox and Cucks.
Nice.
I'm not impressed. Ian Duncan-Smith, 25 grand a year. Either do a bolt-up job on this company and get a decent wad of cash. It's just humiliating. You remember the original MP scandals over the expenses? And the most notorious Tory one was the man who charged the nation to renovate his duck house, right?
And his rambling house.
Yeah, in his rambling home, exactly. Whereas a lot of the Labour Party swindlers seem to have essentially had a dormer window put into the attic so that they could rent out the roof to some students. I kind of feel like Ian Duncan-Smith is in the Labour Party end of the spectrum here with this one.
Well, he's very concerned with poverty. Please tell me the headline for that one was "Taxpayer Foots Bill for Duck House."
Very nice. Amanda, you've got a story as well. This is about the race to jab 100,000 NHS staff.
That's right.
Sounds
well,
like a great race.
It's this.
We're going to get sponsored for that.
Yeah, maybe this is what they should do. They should make it reality TV and have rival teams and see how fast they can jab them. Yeah, this is. I mean, a few papers are covering something similar. Race to jab 100,000 NHS staff is because from next April, the frontline staff, the ones with contact with the public, will have to have 2 vaccinations or lose their jobs, basically. Which, I mean, it seems very common sense because obviously if you're vaccinated, it doesn't eliminate the chance you're going to catch it and pass it on, but it reduces it. So it's kind of sensible.
Do you happen to know the factors? Because I know it drastically limits the chance that you will be hospitalised or you will experience severe pain yourself.
Oh, yes. No, for yourself.
But how much does it limit the chance that you'll be a vector?
You pass it on. It reduces it, but it doesn't cut it out altogether. No. So I think that makes it less clear-cut. Also, most people are saying what it'll do is people who meant to do it but haven't got round to it, it will spur them on. They go, oh, yeah, I must do that. I must get round to it. But people who are not happy with the idea are actually going to dig their heels in and go, no, well, I'm not going to do it. And it's all very well saying we won't do it till next April because we don't want all the staff to leave during the winter.
Yeah.
But to be honest, if you were a NHS nurse or something and you've been through the last 18 months and now you're being told that you're going to be sacked if you don't get a jab you don't want to get, why would you hang around till April? You're going to leave now, aren't you? I would.
Well, expose yourself again,
you know, I think they should get vaccinated. I think vaccination's a great thing for their own protection and to
also
for
and
to help protect
of it slightly as well. Right? No, not so much that.
That's just you, Simon.
Okay.
That's
Why don't they just give all the money that they're...
I go to the airport just to get free.
As long as they've been double jabbed.
Yeah.
Why don't they just give all that money that they're giving to the Tory MPs and just give them and say, look, we'll give you a grand. Well, exactly. Exactly. Take that money, a grand to get your vaccine. Then, mate, I'll get the triple. I'll get.
Or we'll fly you out to the British Virgin Islands, get vaccinated there, get a week's holiday, and then come back.
I mean, I do kind of think a little bit of financial incentive at this point might not be. I mean, I remember, I
guess a job is a financial incentive.
Yeah.
Not being unemployed.
Although probably not if you're like a porter or a healthcare assistant in the NHS. It's probably not that much of an incentive. I mean, they're talking about. There was a guy saying, I think it was a nurse said, well, I've already started a side business, dog training with my partner, and I might just leave and do that. Yeah. All the lockdown dogs, hanging around.
And then I'm thinking, get bitten and get rabies.
And but he could probably teach them a thing or two about incentives, because when you teach dogs, you don't train them with cruelty. You train them with kindness and making them want to do what you want.
We need a nurse whisperer.
That's that's what Sajid Javid should be doing. Instead of saying we'll sack you if you don't get this jab.
People have very sad memories of the last time they gave their dog an injection. Though I don't think you want to put those into the minds of too many nurses. Okay, listen. Moving on to this story. I will say though, I read a book called A Fine Balance set in India. I think in the 1960s or 70s. Indira Gandhi had a program where she wanted to enforce sterilisation on poor people, and she offered them a transistor radio, and apparently it was a very popular move. Something worth bearing in mind, maybe. Okay,
you're not speaking to me personally. I know I've got a lot of kids, but
I know you're a parent. This is the way to
maybe an iPhone.
Time for Christmas. The Telegraph have this story, which is much more serious and rather concerning and worrying and distressing, which is concerning Belarus massing refugees on the Polish border. Essentially, Lukashenko, who I think it is unanimous across the British mainstream media, is a bit of a wrong 'un as well. In fact, he probably puts Geoffrey Cox into some degree of perspective. He is furious with the EU on various issues. They appear to want to thwart him in various aims that he has, and sanctions and so on. And so what he's been doing is luring would-be EU refugee migrants into Belarus, telling them that it's a sort of fast-track opportunity to get into the EU across the Polish border. And now he's threatening to unleash them. It is an appalling way, obviously, to use tired, hungry, desperate people. And they are now just camped out on the streets of Minsk and all points towards the Poles, meanwhile, have erected very swiftly rolls of barbed wire, and they've got their armed guards on the border, and there are migrants from North Africa, from Iraq, from all the usual places, essentially, where refugee stroke, economic migrant stroke, asylum seekers come from, on the other side, waving spades and shovels and looking distressed and huddled and poor. A grim situation. The photographs on the front pages of the newspapers, none of which
Guardian.
you've got one up there. Yeah, hold that up to the camera because they. Can I take that one? There we go. I don't know if you can see that. There we go. It's always hard to know when you first see one of those pictures on the front of the Guardian newspaper whether this is a refugee crisis or another failed festival. But at this time of year, it's probably fair to assume it's the former. It's. I mean, it's really grim, and it doesn't feel to me like this is going to be an isolated incident. It feels to me like the more this sort of thing becomes normalised, the more that people of this kind will be weaponised. What do you think?
Well, yeah, weaponised is exactly the word, isn't it? Because you've got, on the one hand, the EU, which is all very freedom of movement within the EU, but if you come from anywhere else, well, tough, we're going to let you freeze or drown and you can't come in. Yeah. And then Lukashenko...
They've outsourced their fences, haven't they?
Yeah, they're literally paying warlords in Libya to keep migrants there. It's not a nice thing at all. And then Lukashenko, who is an old school dictator, has gone, right, well, this will annoy them and also make them look bad because now they look like the really heartless ones with the poor freezing migrants from Syria and Afghanistan and so on in the woods, and the EU in the form of Poland saying, no, go away, you can't just come in.
But Poland itself is often, I would say, to some extent, demonised by the EU, the administration. Poland and Hungary, they're the two black sheep of that family, aren't they? In the sense that they are perceived to be anti-refugee, anti-migrant, anti-open borders and so on. And then you look, well, you go, maybe this is why, because it's their border that's under threat. And now the EU going, oh, no, we quite like the way you man the borders. No, that wasn't the problem at all. I don't know. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, it's terrible.
Hard to dig jokes out of.
No, it's just really. I mean, what these people have already been through in their own countries, and then to come here and be used this way, it's just obviously it's disgusting, and obviously he's a horrible human being, and it's they're out there and it's winter. It's coming. It's horrible.
Winter is coming.
Let's move on to something funny.
I kind of feel like Game of Thrones set us up for a bad few years with that phrase, didn't it? We need to go back to... Where can we get All Creatures Great and Small back on the screen so maybe we can all cheer up a bit? Coming up after the break, we take a look at what the husband of ISIS bride Shamima Begum has been saying about married life as we continue to delve into tomorrow's papers. But first, here's the weather.
Hello again. Clear spells will prevail across Scotland and Northern Ireland during the next 24 hours, albeit with further blustery showers in places. Generally cloudy and damp elsewhere across a large part of England and Wales because of this slow-moving cold front. It is a weakening feature, but it is bringing a lot of cloud, low cloud at that, and some outbreaks of rain and drizzle, whilst unstable westerlies affect Scotland and Northern Ireland. Showers at times and perhaps a more organised feature pushing through during the evening, first part of Wednesday, to bring some more prolonged showers. But that clears. Clear skies then for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, whilst largely cloudy conditions stick around for England and Wales, away from the far southeast, which could see some clear spells. But mild for England and Wales as we start off Wednesday, albeit very gloomy. A lot of low cloud covering the hills and some persistent wet weather for parts of the southwest, Wales into the Midlands, East Anglia, Lincolnshire. That rain on and off through the day, I think, easing perhaps into the afternoon, but it's going to stay grey and overcast. Some brightness coming through in the far south and southeast, whilst it's a sunnier day for North Wales, Northern England, and Scotland and Northern Ireland will see further blustery showers coming through. Some strengthening of the winds in the far north and northwest and some heavier rain pushing through on Wednesday evening in the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere, a lot of cloud remains, and that cloud again lowering to cover hills, some misty coasts as well, and some patchy light rain and drizzle at times. But a mild night to come once again in the south, whilst it's a bit colder further north. Thursday then looks largely dry, but not entirely sunny. There will be a lot of cloud cover, particularly across southern and central parts of the UK. Perhaps some dense fog to start off things in the south. But it does brighten up in the south whilst this cloud drifts north. And then Friday it turns more unsettled generally in the north of the UK. And on Saturday, Sunday, things look a lot drier.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. Before the break, we were looking at who's hitting the headlines, but now we're taking a deep dive into the meat of the papers. Josh, let us start with you.
So this is in The Independent. Shamima Begum, I thought her husband was dead. I think that's now the husband. I don't know how many husbands you've got, but there is a husband who is still alive who has been interviewed.
Which one's the husband?
Yeah. It's with the cap, and basically he misses her, which is really very sweet and romantic. Yeah. And in a documentary, he talks about it, and he sort of says how there were some nice days with my wife at home and kids at home. So I'm getting a sort of
in between the murdering people.
Yeah, exactly. In between killing other Muslims and beheading people.
Does he denounce his former life?
He sort of didn't talk about it. He still wants there to be a caliphate.
No comment. Wants there to be a caliphate.
Yeah, still wants
there.
How does
he want it to extend?
I guess
Poland, Belarus?
Yeah, probably. But I'm sort of seeing a sitcom here, maybe.
Yeah.
Kind of, hi, honey, I'm home.
Yeah, or good night, sweetheart. A little bit. I don't know. Yeah.
But it's
as somebody said, I think it's probably not the ideal person you want speaking up for your case, is it? In that regard, you know.
Yeah.
Remember, Begum wants to be regarded as cleansed,
having nothing to do with
exactly.
it.
She
Yeah,
can come in, and the husband says, "I still want to see the caliphate, but she should be allowed to come back to the country in the meantime."
Yeah,
difficult. I don't know. How would you feel about it?
Yes, I miss the way she used to wash the blood out of my clothes after I'd been beheading prisoners and
dust down my vest.
Yes,
when it had misfired.
Very carefully with a feather duster.
Yeah. But she looks, I mean, in those pictures, which I have seen both those pictures before, she looks like she's undergone a significant makeover. I mean, is that, in the modern world, that's probably enough, isn't it?
Well, I like her cap.
Yeah.
But that was it. When those new photos came out, they were sort of saying that it was just all for show, and this was just to show how she's been westernised, and like that's a trip to TK Maxx is enough to forgive you of your crimes.
Yeah, it's like a teenage mistake.
Yeah.
What have you got, Tamandra?
Well, I've got some story, I think it's in tomorrow's Guardian, but it's certainly in a couple of papers about COP26.
Oh, yeah.
And
I was wondering when they pay attention to that.
Well, today apparently was Gender and Science and Innovation Day at COP26. And the science and innovation bit I get, because frankly that is going to be our way out of here, isn't it? Yeah, it's like, you know, Rolls-Royce mini nuclear plants and that. But I don't see where the gender thing comes into it at all. I mean, I'm like, but if we're talking about a planet-wide physics problem, which we basically are, the only thing I could think of was women probably emit a bit more CO2 because we have to sigh a lot.
Yeah. What about the methane as well?
Well, that's what the men, you see. The men contribute more methane. That's my theory.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Let me just show you how that sounds.
Well, it's a fair point, because there are, I mean, the thing about COP26 and about the climate crisis generally as a conversation is that I think a lot of people on the right suspect it of being like a covert attempt to introduce worldwide socialism. I don't know what to say, through the back door. It's through an wide open gate.
Yeah.
But the idea is that you kind of talk about you can't talk about climate without talking about the global south, without talking about discrepancies in poverty and wealth, the distribution of opportunities in the world, the degree to which many of the poor people live on the banks of the whatever river it is that floods Bangladesh on a fairly frequent basis, you know, at the best of times. So there's always these kind of introductions of what you might call sort of intersectional notions of power and so on. But the gender thing, generally speaking, men and women live in the same place, don't they? That one's going to be trickier to convince me.
Really, really baffled.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I think it is true to say, but the problem is both climate change and the measures that they want us to adopt to overcome it both affect lots of people very differently in different parts of the world. And so, yes, you can talk about, you know, poor people and climate change. You can also talk about poor people and stopping development, which, you know, I think would be the best thing for them. But yeah, you're right. Gender. I mean, really, I do not see what that has to do with anything.
Has it been like totally dominated by the window dressing? It seems to me.
I think so. I mean, look, it's discussions of this to talk about this is what is going to dominate the next 100 years.
Right. You think we got that long? That's good.
Yeah. Well, if we're lucky. You're right. If we're lucky. Well, they just sort of said now, didn't they? A big report just came out and said, oh, actually, it's too late and we're all going to die. Yeah. Essentially, we're already going to go above that if things stay. So it's sort of it's I don't really know what we're going to do. What are you doing?
Well, it's an apocalyptic cult, isn't it? Basically. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying there isn't any climate change, because I think there is, and you let us build nuclear power stations.
Like the tide's coming in, and we'll just keep inching up, won't we? And one or two people will fall asleep, and they'll get a bit wet. You know, somebody's dad will have been buried in the sun.
But I just think that for a lot of people, they love the idea that it's the end of the world, it's the apocalypse. It trumps everything else. It trumps any kind of sensible debate about let's do that instead of this. Yeah. No, it's the end of the world. You must all do what we say. And if you don't want to do what we say, then you're ignoring the science. And
well, I'm in the just do what you say category, but that's just because I'm lazy to read stuff. I'm like, I'm happy to do that. I'll eat some less meat. And
do you virtue signal? Do you wait until there's a lot
too lazy to
pavement traffic before you go out with your recycling?
I do. No, I do it very loudly at 1 in the morning anyway, because that's the only time I get to myself to actually clean up the house.
Recycling is a tricky issue in itself. Reusing, I like that idea that would you reuse before you recycle, or there's like an order, isn't there? Just stop using is the best thing. Then reuse something, again, basically don't make things single use, and then repurpose them, and then recycle them, which is the last thing. My kids, this was a few years ago, to be fair, maybe they've wised up since, at school, for National Recycling Day, they were asked to make a garment out of newspaper to demonstrate how things can be reimagined. So my daughter wanted to make a sort of rah-rah skirt, like a hula skirt, of like strips of newspaper. We haven't had a newspaper in the house for, I don't know, about 5 years. We read all our news on screen, so, and I'm quite happy.
She didn't make it out of iPads.
No, smashing up an iPad, threading them together. I literally had to go to the shops and buy a newspaper specifically so that we could recycle it.
So that she could reuse it.
Andrew Gale, who's got this one? We've been looking at Andrew Gale. This is the Yorkshire.
Yeah.
This is the Yorkshire.
This is kind of. I mean, it's, I don't know anything about sport.
No.
And cricket.
Well, let's just
I understand that cricket.
Blasé about our ignorance.
Yeah, I understand that there is. So I understand that is a game called cricket.
And it looks like he's got some kind of barbell there. Is it that for some sort of?
Yeah, he's a weightlifting cricketer or something.
Yeah, he's got the
who's been Specsavers. And yes, well, maybe he should have been Specsavers because he wrote an offensive tweet.
Is it repeatably offensive? Can you say it with certain ends?
No, well, that's the thing. The fact that I might be able to repeat it is actually not necessarily a good thing. It's an offensive term for Jew. I am Jewish.
Oh, right.
And I think you knew that.
No, I knew that.
You were like, oh, really, Josh? You've talked about it. You've only told me for 20 years. Yeah, so he...
So when was this tweet?
But this is the thing. It was in 2010.
Right.
And
we didn't know about Jews then, right?
Yeah, exactly. We were a new thing. It was like, well, he didn't. He's claiming he didn't, and he didn't realise it was an offensive term.
No.
Right. And he sort of had some banter, this ties in with what also has been going on in the same team in Yorkshire, and supposedly the person he was addressing then called him up because it was on Twitter. It said, actually, you know what, mate? That's a really offensive term.
Yeah.
That's out of order. And he deleted it straight away. Now, someone obviously took a screenshot at the time, and now it's come up. And now he's been suspended.
These things lurk, don't they?
They do lurk. And I think it's wrong. Him using that term was wrong. Yeah. I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, OK, the fact that someone called him and said, look, this is out of order, and he deleted it, whereas I have spoken to people and said that's out of order, and because they're getting lots of retweets, they'll leave it up.
It's a banger.
Yeah. Sorry, you know.
It's going viral. What can I do at this point?
And but obviously it's tying in with what's been going on with other ethnicities.
But that's not a good thing, is it? This ties into, this speaks to, this is a part of, all that kind of language, which suggests a kind of legitimacy to focusing on this.
But that's the thing, isn't it? You take things out of their original context, and which is that he apologised and deleted it, and you put it into a new context, which is, oh, people have just noticed that some cricketers are racist, so we've now got to go through everybody's ancient history and dig up something they might have once said and punish them for it now. I mean, there's no end to any of this stuff.
No.
How far back are you going to go before you say, actually, this person has apologised and changed, and let's move on?
It quite clearly is obviously as well tied into the general direction of travel in the different cultures. For instance, you know, there was a famous case about 2 years ago when a New York Times reporter was hired, and she was found to have posted extraordinarily offensive tweets and had never deleted them.
Yeah.
But she was mixed race, but I think broadly East Asian ancestry, and she had posted tweets about white men and what she wanted to do to them. And, you know, it was like, I mean, it was really horrifically, it was violent, it spoke of them in the most disparaging, sort of bestial terms, you know. But because that was seen as almost progressive, it was fine. She didn't even have to delete the tweet. She went on and joined the editorial staff.
Someone, I think the person who's been hired on Twitter this week to curate the Middle East is exactly the same. Offensive tweets have come up about Israel, and that's all good.
Yeah.
It's about Israel, so it's fine.
Well, coming up, we'll be asking why everyone hates James Corden. I wouldn't have thought that was really a question that needed asking at this point, but back after this.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. Tamandra, Josh and I are still rummaging through the papers. Tamandra, I believe you have a story about James Corden, which has caught your eye.
No,
you know what? I'm obsessed with James. Sorry, I'm the James Corden fan.
So sorry, you're the James Corden. I should have just looked up and seen who was.
Come on, Ray. I was like, this was my moment. Now, finally, I actually know about something.
I am interested because he's quite a divisive figure, isn't he, James Corden? There are those who
really hate him and those who just hate him.
Who haven't seen him yet. Yeah.
I don't need to step on your. But yeah, he's so there's I've never seen it. Wicked, the musical. Oh, there he is.
There he is. Far from Wicked.
God, even there, you just want to. Anyway, and the problem is, he's just too ubiquitous at the moment, and I've only just learnt what that means. But they want him to be in the film of Wicked. Right. And so
someone Wicked, which is the
famous musical about Wizard of Oz,
yeah.
And so someone has started a petition on change.org, and it's got to say basically we just don't want him involved anyway.
No reasons given, not cancellation.
He's not racist or anything.
Witcherphobic.
Yeah, no, not witcher. And so it's got 60,000 signatures.
Wow.
Well, yeah. How is it so little?
Yeah,
surely it should be in the millions.
Change.org in their email server because they've had so many vexations.
Crashing it down.
And bring the government down.
Isn't there something sweet and old-fashioned about just saying we don't want him in it because we don't think he would be right for this film, as opposed to going, we found 18 years ago he made a tweet or he once said something to somebody backstage at 2 a.m. It's like, no, we just don't want him in the film.
I mean, it might be that
for artistic reasons.
Yeah, maybe he wasn't born a witch. Maybe. No, so it's the witches.
So witches should only be played by witches.
Fellow witches, something like that. That could be the way to get him out of it. Somehow.
Green face.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they should take up your idea.
Good point. I'd be honest with you, joking aside, I don't find him quite as offensive as a lot of people seem to. I find him kind of just on the offensive side of neutral. There's a couple of things. When he did that interview with Paul McCartney, that car karaoke thing, that was sweet. That was really
you like that one?
I like that. And Corden himself was obviously moved by Macca's extraordinary, inexhaustible charm.
Have you seen the rat dance he did?
Yes, that was annoying. And then he ruined Into the Woods, and then he did. But the rat dance was the thing from Cats, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the Friends reunion. It was just like.
No, it's I do agree with you, though. You should be allowed to say, if you're a fan of a movie, no, this is the wrong person. I don't want them anywhere near it. And I think it's probably good that Corden is being hit with this now, because it will open it up, because there's always suspicions, aren't there, otherwise? There's some people said, for instance, there was a recent scandal, not a scandal, but Morgan Freeman, I think, has been cast as Macbeth. In a film to be made by somebody like Sam Mendes, maybe not him, but somebody of that. Oh no, the Coen brothers. That's right. Coen brothers making a film of Macbeth, and Morgan has cast. And several people said, I think he's a bit old, and everyone goes, yeah, that's not it, is it? It's not because he's too old, is it? We all know what it is, really. Just say it. Well, if they get him, that's potentially setting a precedent that could be useful.
So what you're saying is they should put Morgan Freeman in Wicked?
Yeah.
Instead. Okay,
And you get to play Macbeth, or are you going to be in Wicked?
It's another black actor, and I've absolutely...
Oh, my God, that's the word. Well, that's it. The station's closed now.
Never mind. Who is doing the story on the speed camera flash? Is that you?
That's me. Now, this is... It's an adorable... Well, it's adorable but very sad story. So... in the Daily Mail, bum rap is the headline, and it was a man who, all right, so he mooned a speed camera, He bared his bottom, a 55-year-old bared his bottom at a mobile speed camera
no photos, yeah.
in Kidderminster. And then he was arrested.
I can improvise. Do you want to see a
Yeah, please.
Visual aid.
Yes.
And then he was arrested. Six police officers turned up to his house to arrest him.
He's being arrested now. We can.
There you go. I mean, this is a bit overkill.
It's ridiculous for a man who's not even currently mooning. I mean, if he was actually in the process.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't even like stop. You know, he's not like stopping him.
Nobody even looks at speed cameras.
No, but the backstory is really sad.
The backstory.
The backside story, because he's a retired university lecturer. He'd been given a diagnosis of a terminal illness.
Oh, God.
He's got multiple system atrophy, and he had a bucket list of things I want to do before I die, which is now imminent. He had probably months or a few years to live, and one of them was to moon a speed camera. I mean, of all the harmless things on your bucket list, so he mooned a speed camera.
Also, to be fair, of all the stupid things on your bucket list.
It would be hard to trigger the speed camera, so the speed camera won't see him. You've got to moon the speed camera at speed.
Well,
You've got to be speeding,
otherwise
it doesn't.
Maybe he was driving 120 miles an hour.
Unless it's one of those average moon
Maybe
cameras
he
that
was
they have
on his
the motorways.
Ducati with his leathers pulled down. In which case, all I can say is big respect to that man. Maybe he was driving at the time, which the story unfortunately doesn't say. But I just think I mean, how humorless can the police be? Which is a slightly rhetorical question these days.
Wow, that's extraordinary.
We should all go and moon speed cameras in solidarity, I think.
Yeah, moonlighting, like, Geoffrey Cox and... OK, Jeremy Clarkson is next. Who's got that story? Jeremy Clarkson has, unsurprisingly, spoken out against Greta Thunberg.
This is straight. What a news story. Wow.
It's least surprising news.
There he is. There's his handsome mush.
Yeah.
The sage of the Cotswolds.
Yeah.
Well, he said
trim your eyebrows, man.
God.
Look at that.
That she need. No, come on.
Sorry.
Don't brow shame.
I just. I miss the old untrimmed eyebrows on men. But there you go. Well, he said that Greta Thunberg needs a smacked bottom. She has no knowledge of how the world works, no manners, and no letters after her name, because instead of going to school, she's been busy sailing around the world so she can be mardy and abusive to grown-ups. What she needs is a smacked bottom. And I think the thing is, I think what he says about her may be objectively true, but it's a bit unfair because she basically has been groomed as a teenager to be the mouthpiece for grown-ups so that they can then hide behind her and say, well, you can't be nasty to Greta. She's only a teenager and she's...
Do you think it'd be less creepy if Jeremy had suggested that Greta's mother or handler or whatever she has
should have had a smacked bottom.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's creepy in a different way, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
it still wouldn't make the message sink in, would it? Smack bottoms have been proven they don't correlate with good outcomes. I think that's why
Are you the evidence of that?
I was the last child in my line. Do you know what? I don't think I ever got one from a parent. I remember a single smacked thigh in the playground at the age of about 4 because I did push somebody off the climbing frame.
Wow.
And I can remember it to this day, and the way it smarted and the shame it does. You rocket into the shame stratosphere. I mean, that is the thing about a good smack.
Did it make you want to stop sort of fighting for the environment?
Yeah,
when you
absolutely.
That's what the smack did.
It introduced me to the world of fast cars and farming.
Well, that's what it does.
But talking about slapping, we have a woman who's been slapping her horse around and been caught on camera.
Oh, this is horrible. The footage is really. I mean, so she there's this very short clip of her basically kicking and punching this horse. It turns out that she's a primary school teacher.
Wow.
So she has been suspended, and I suppose she's getting death threats and stuff. And that, I mean, that's maybe too much, but it's
maybe too much.
No, I mean, look, it just. But when people start getting death threats, it's like, well, don't punch a horse, but you can kill a human.
I mean, she throws a punch.
Yeah, I mean, it's really horrible to see it.
Yeah.
But then there's this picture of her just looking like this really sort of ideal a teacher, primary school teacher, with in front of her student, and you just think, Gosh, I really want to ask those kids.
Do you think whenever I've done something wrong, I quickly get a blood test, and I'm almost always from some sort of hormone imbalance?
Yeah, you're a bit obsessed with your hormones, aren't you, Sam? I have noticed.
Revealed
that's got you out of a lot of bother.
Generally speaking, honestly, seriously, look at her. I mean, we've concealed her face there for obvious reasons, but you know, she's virtually dressed as a horse. So her lower half matches leg for leg the horse. She obviously
Do you think
loves
it's projection?
The horse. She is
and we haven't concealed the victim's face, which I think is a bit sad.
That's true.
But now everyone knows who it happens.
Well, that's what they always want to say. Know the victim's name. What's the name of the horse?
Yeah,
it's true. What is the name of the horse?
You have some good old-fashioned phone box stories, beloved phone box.
Well, it's and that again is actually rather sweet. Somewhere in the Guardian, because.
This is for our younger viewers who don't know what a phone box is.
That is a good point, actually.
Doctor Who arrested and realised the benefits.
Anyone under 40, when you used to have to make a phone call and you weren't at home, you had to go into one of these boxes where there was a telephone and you could give it money and make a phone call.
The telephone was this big.
Sometimes a number of handy cards up above the receiver, which you could
collect.
From very friendly ladies inviting you to call
models.
them. Well, of course, I mean, it's easy to think, oh, everyone has a mobile phone now, why do you need a phone box? But in fact, not everybody has a mobile phone. And
my son, for instance, when he forgets to take it with him.
Exactly. Everybody's parents, when they refuse to turn them on, so they take them out, but they don't turn them on. And there are places in the country where you can't actually get a mobile phone signal. So there's been a move to close them all down, take them away. And then there's been a lot of pushback against this. People saying, no, we need this here. So BT have been kind of like taking them away and emptying them. Some of them have been repurposed as libraries or...
Yes, I've seen library ones, which I think is quite...
Yeah, that's a nice idea.
Things like that.
Or shooting galleries, would that work?
I think they do. I think that's exactly what they do. And... But now there's a lot of pushback, and Ofcom has said, no, you can't just take them all away. Actually, you need to leave them here if you can't get a signal nearby or if they have been used recently.
Point. And they could actually be used to provide a signal as well.
Well, I did slightly think that. Why don't you just put an antenna on the top?
But they're also, I've got to say, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I can't remember where she was from, but it was America. And I was saying the lovely thing with Ordnance Survey maps is that at a certain scale, like the reasonably close-up scale, they include things like a phone box. And public house was always granted the same status as a church. If his church shows up, a public house will show up. And all these things that are actually part of your life, that are important, they're sort of they're enshrined in the Ordnance Survey map of my youth. And I don't want to see these things go and to see phone box on a map. And
I think we have reached peak GB News. Talking about Ordnance Survey maps and red phone boxes, this is the core demographic of the audience here.
Well, you'll be pleased to know then that some of them have been converted to house public defibrillators.
Okay.
So if people get too excited at the sight of a red phone box and have a heart attack, they can be revived.
Defibrillator wrongly and it actually induces a heart attack. I've always thought that
Let's try it out.
Yeah. First, make sure they're having a heart attack, like that old joke. Remember? First, make sure
he's dead.
Yeah. Bang. Josh, you have a story, I believe, about another actor, or is it the same activist? Is it our favourite actor?
I know. Well, Greta. There's a lot.
She's a lot of Greta.
Yeah, a lot of Greta going on. So the producers have
still unsmacked Greta.
Yes, you could just tell that
getting away with it
every time. So she, Channel 4, the soap Hollyoaks, which I haven't watched, I'm afraid, along with watching cricket. They have had a shop on their programme called, wait for it, Sweater Thunberg, which sells fish. No, clothing. And they think that that's going to be enough to get her on a cameo on Hollyoaks. And you just think about like all the taxis who are driving all the Hollyoaks people around. How much is Hollyoaks killing? I mean, it says Hollyoaks, doesn't mean it's actually saving the environment just because it sounds like a nice green
named after
thing.
2 trees.
Yeah, that's not enough. To get you Greta.
What
to
if
come
they
on board.
planted a holly or an oak every episode until she came on?
Exactly. That's something good. Just calling this. But the worst thing is that the screenwriter has said that it's a brilliant pun.
Do you know what would be a brilliant pun? I've thought this for some time now. I would like to open genuinely an ecologically sound, environmentally safe theme park, and it would be the shape of an iceberg, but I would call it the Greta Thunberg. And you would go into the Thunberg and it would be full of, you know, carbon neutral
Jeremy
activities.
Clarkson
smacking
you.
Glasses, but it'd be Clarkson's face, which, to be honest, looks like it has been slapped almost daily for the last 40 years anyway. I don't even notice. Have you got any good Greta Thunberg puns? I'm putting you on the spot.
You are putting me on the spot.
A little Thunberg that you could just have like a thumb puppet, like the finger pops. He's dead now, so that's out of copyright.
Yeah.
I was thinking just if you'd never ever tweeted anything offensive about her, then you could have no regretta.
Non, je ne regrette.
Yeah, je ne regrette Thunberg.
Very nice.
That was my favourite moment on Desert Island Disc when Ed Miliband was on, and he chose as his third disc or something, Je ne regrette rien, by Edith Piaf, of course. And afterwards they said, lovely song, why did you pick that? And he said, because one of my great regrets in life was that I never learned to speak French. I promise you he said that. It's the most perfect joke you could never...
That's so good.
It's so good. Hermetically sealed irony without no accent.
And his inability to actually know that. Is what makes it
didn't
even...
know. I regret nothing. Oh, it's a lovely French song. I wonder what it's about. I regret nothing. Well, it's better than regrets. I've had a few, I suppose, isn't it?
Exactly.
You know, politicians are warned off.
You don't want to be saying
they?
Greta's, I've had a few. That would.
So what do we think? Has COP26 been worthwhile overall? Let's sum up that. That's been the big story for the last...
Well, it depends what you mean by worthwhile. Is it going to change the course of climate change? Probably not, because they could have done that by Zoom.
Yeah.
Is it going to send all the ruling parties of all the world off with a renewed sense of moral superiority so they can tell us all what we have to give up? Yes.
I have remember Douglas Adams, who wrote, of course, the great comic Hitchhiker's Guidebooks and so on. He wrote Last Chance to See, which is an extraordinarily brilliant book, easily the most entertaining and enjoyable and interesting book I've read on endangered species, which is probably
I'm going to get it
category.
as soon as I buy some ordnance survey maps after this.
Last Chance to See, right? And so he talks about the extraordinary variety, the biodiversity of the planet, and he loves the sort of personality differences. He talks about rhinos, who are among his favourites. He climbed Kilimanjaro to save the rhino. And he says rhinos are interesting because by comparison with humans, rhinos live in a world of smells and they use their eyes as a backup measure, as a last resort if they've got a really heavy head cold or whatever. But most of the time, they're getting all their info. So he said, by comparison, if you were a human and you lived in a housing estate and you thought you could smell smoke, you might go hours before you investigated. Then you come around the corner one day and there's a skip on fire and, oh my God, call the fire brigade. Rhinos in that environment would see the skip on fire for hours and not do anything about it until the wind changed and they caught a whiff of smoke. And then they would suddenly all panic and stampede. They wouldn't call the fire brigade, they'd just run away. I think that possibly this climate crisis meeting might be the point at which we've moved from being able to smell smoke but not see it to actually being able to see it. It just feels possibly like it's changed, the pitch and the tone of the conversation has changed. And I wonder whether it's because 2 years of lockdown have basically softened everyone up for vast, virtually World Federation scales of intervention, whether we're all kind of in the mood to try and pull together and we might even miss our harnesses if we were freed from them now. I don't know. What do you think? No,
I think that's dead right. And certainly Patrick Vallance a couple of days ago basically said, well, you've all got to do, climate change is going to require behaviour change and you've all got to do what the scientists tell you.
Yeah.
And you could just think, oh, you've really got into the habit of this with COVID. Where you stood up and did your briefings and showed us some pretty dodgy graphs sometimes and said, well, this just shows that all pubs must now shut at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. Whatever random time we think of. And you mustn't do this, but you can do that, and we're going to ignore it anyway. And people have gone along with it to an extraordinary degree.
The capacity of the government to get away with non sequiturs lately is...
Exactly. And I can completely see now that the environmentalists and also government, who are still looking for a moral mission, are going, well, this is great. We just switch to the apocalypse, the end of the world, and say you obviously have to do what we tell you now, otherwise the world is going to end. It's not even just a measly pandemic killing millions of people, and therefore you must all give up your burgers and your travelling around by car, and you must all turn your heating down and wear jumpers. And
how do you feel about that, Josh? Are you on board with that?
Yeah. Sorry.
I'm lazy too. I know what you mean.
I just let the side. I'm like, look, I'll do what you tell me. I do think that, I believe in climate change as a belief or whatever. I think that action needs to be taken, and life as we know it has to change. And that kind of sucks.
There was a point at which they brought in driving licences, wasn't there? And probably everyone went, I'm not going to carry around some documentation. Of course I'm fit to drive a car.
But Does it not worry you that everything that we have to do to save the planet somehow involves us giving things up and making do with less?
Yeah.
That we're going to have to travel less and buy less stuff.
Well, look, if once they get this meat out that is like
use less
grown
energy
in vats and things like that,
and not eat nice things anymore. Do you sometimes think, what is it here? Are you enjoying saving us? Or are you enjoying telling us that we've all been very bad people and we must be punished?
On that note, I have to round up because otherwise I shall be a bad person. I shall get a rap on the knuckles. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Josh Howie and Tamandra Harkness. A warm round of applause in virtual form for you. Tomorrow night, Dominic Frisby will be in the driving seat. Do join him then. Thank you very much for watching. This has been Headliners. Good night.
Hello again. Clear spells will prevail across Scotland and Northern Ireland during the next 24 hours, albeit with further blustery showers in places. Generally cloudy and damp elsewhere across a large part of England and Wales because of this slow-moving cold front. It is a weakening feature, but it is bringing a lot of cloud, low cloud at that, and some outbreaks of rain and drizzle, whilst unstable westerlies affect Scotland and Northern Ireland. Showers at times and perhaps a more organised feature pushing through during the evening, first part of Wednesday, to bring some more prolonged showers. But that clears. Clear skies then for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, whilst